Right now, I want you to forget razor-sharp claws. Forget rows upon rows of terrifying teeth. Instead, picture this. A predator whose ultimate weapon isn't hidden away. It's right there on its face. A beak, but not just any beak. Imagine one honed by evolution into a biological battle axe, powerful enough to shatter your skull with one single, devastating blow. When it charges at you with terrifying speed, you wouldn't even have time to let out a scream. That beak wasn't merely a tool for feeding. It was a deadly masterpiece of evolution. And here's what might shock you even more. These monsters were utterly flightless. These were birds, walking the earth, spreading absolute terror to anything unlucky enough to cross their path. They'll make you ask, how on earth could a bird descended from creatures often known for their sweet songs and effortless flight give up the sky entirely to become a ruler of the land? And why? How could birds possibly usurp the throne of the apex mammalian predators? Welcome to the realm of the terror bird, possessor of arguably the most terrifyingly effective beak in the entire history of life on Earth. 66 million years ago, a relatively small visitor from space slammed into our planet, bringing the dinosaurs' absolute reign crashing down in what felt like an instant. The greatest mass extinction event our world has ever known swept across the globe, scouring almost all life from the surface. But even in the heart of destruction, life quietly endured. The small, the lucky, the overlooked, these survivors began a new evolutionary race, one to claim the throne left vacant by the fallen giants. On most continents, mammals adapted with blinding speed, rapidly seizing the throne as the new dominant predators. But in South America, the story took a wildly different turn. At that time, South America wasn't connected like it is today. It was a colossal island continent, completely isolated by vast oceans. And it was here, in this magnificent isolation, that one of evolution's most bizarre and truly spectacular experiments began to unfold. An experiment that produced creatures so strange, so unexpected, you'd struggle to believe they ever truly walked this earth unless you saw them with your own eyes. We often believe birds survived the KPG extinction because they were small, could fly to escape danger, and forage over wide areas. And for many bird lineages, that was absolutely true. But down in isolated island, South America, adrift in the vast ocean, bird evolution took a wildly different, utterly unique turn. Forget flying. These birds became runners, hunters, and let's be crystal clear, these weren't some kind of bizarre holdover dinosaurs clinging on. No, they were the direct descendants of the theropods, that famous, fearsome lineage of two-legged carnivorous dinosaurs that includes the mighty T-Rex and the swift velociraptor. The terror birds simply chose a radically different evolutionary path, branching off within the avian family tree itself. You see, in South America's strange, large mammalian predators were virtually non-existent. This left a massive, gaping void at the top of the food chain. And into this void stepped a particular group of birds, belonging to the order Cariamiformes. They saw their chance, a golden opportunity, and they seized it with terrifying ambition. They started getting bigger, much bigger. Their legs grew longer, more powerful, transforming them into phenomenal sprinters, built for chasing down prey across the open savannas and woodlands. And those wings? Increasingly useless for flight, they began to shrink, to wither away. Some scientists believe those stubby wings, tipped with vestigial claws, may have helped maintain balance while sprinting, or even held prey in place. But the real evolutionary investment, the absolute centerpiece of the terror bird arsenal, was that beak. Over millions of years, what might have once been a modest tool for snatching insects or picking up seeds was forged into a weapon of horrifying efficiency. It grew larger, more robust, wickedly sharp. This is a textbook example of convergent evolution, where completely unrelated species independently develop strikingly similar features to adapt to the same way of life. Yes, the terror bird's hooked, sharp beak bears a resemblance to that of a modern eagle or vulture. But evolution pushed this design to an absolute, brutal extreme. It became far more than just a tool for tearing flesh. It was engineered to deliver crushing, fatal blows. Beneath that polished outer layer of keratin, the internal structure of the beak was a masterpiece of biological engineering. Fossil studies using CT scans reveal an intricate network of bone, surprisingly lightweight and almost honeycombed in places, yet incredibly rigid and strong. Think of the beak of a modern toucan, designed for lightness, but in the terror bird, this structure served a dual purpose, minimizing the weight of that enormous head while maximizing its ability to withstand the immense impact forces of those devastating downward strikes. It was the perfect balance for a weapon that needed both speed and bone-shattering power. And curiously, the terror bird's bite force may not have been that impressive. Unlike carnivorous mammals with jaws built for bone crushing, these birds relied on something else: strike force. In 2010, Federico de Grange and his colleagues published a groundbreaking study focusing on Andalgalornis stulii, a terror bird species that lived around 6 million years ago in Argentina. Their research showed Andalgalornis possessed an unusually rigid skull, unlike the more flexible skulls found in many modern birds. They proposed a fascinating hunting strategy. These birds likely use their incredibly powerful neck muscles to swing that reinforced beak downwards like a biological hatchet, compensating for a potentially weaker bite with sheer percussive force. This paints a vivid picture of their attack. Forget prolonged wrestling matches like a lion tackling a buffalo. No, terror. Birds were likely ambush predators, delivering swift, decisive, skull-splitting blows. But the beak wasn't just an axe. That razor-sharp, hooked tip acted like a vicious meat hook. Once prey was stunned or killed by the initial blow, they could use this hook to anchor onto the carcass, ripping through thick hide or tearing away huge chunks of muscle. For smaller prey, they might have simply used the beak to thrash the unfortunate creature against the ground or rocks until it was dead. And perhaps the beak had other purposes too. The oversized skull, with large nasal cavities connected to the beak, may have acted as a resonating chamber. Imagine not birdsong, but deep, booming calls, powerful beak clacking sounds, or loud, intimidating bellows echoing across the plains, used to declare territory, attract a mate, or send shivers down the spines of rivals and potential prey alike. The sound alone must have been terrifying. It was this highly specialized beak that allowed terror birds to take down prey that no other predator could. Fleet-footed hoofed mammals like Notungulata and Litopterna, requiring a lightning-fast opening strike, or juvenile glyptodons, whose armor hadn't yet hardened. The terror bird became an ecosystem engineer, profoundly shaping the evolution of other species on the continent for millions upon millions of years. But here's something you might not know. Terror bird isn't the name of just one species. The reign of the Forus Racidae was more like a diverse federation, with many members, each uniquely adapted to different roles and habitats. And at the heart of that diversity was the evolution and specialization of their beak. Let's meet some of the most prominent members of this terrifying family. First up, the pioneer, the one that started it all. Forus racos longissimus, first discovered in Patagonia, Argentina, living during the Middle Miocene epoch. This bird stood around 2 feet tall and weighed a hefty 287 pounds. Forus racos is your quintessential, classic large terror bird, the embodiment of that fearsome axe beak and powerful legs born to dominate the grasslands. Its beak struck a terrifying balance between sheer size and crushing power, perfectly capable of taking down medium-sized prey. But even among terror birds, there was a true king, Kelenken Guillermoy, also hailing from Patagonia. Kelenken lived around the same time as Forus racos, perhaps slightly earlier. This is the tallest terror bird ever discovered, potentially reaching nearly 10 feet high and tipping the scales at a staggering 400 to 550 pounds, maybe even more. Its defining trait was a record-breaking skull, the longest of any known bird, stretching up to 28 inches. This colossal beak was the ultimate weapon of destruction, allowing Kelenken to potentially hunt even larger prey. It represents the absolute pinnacle of terror bird size and power. Then we have Andalgalornis stuleti, the species we mentioned earlier. Living in northwest Argentina about 6 million years ago, it was smaller, standing around 6 to 5 feet tall and weighing 88 to 110 pounds. Andalgalornis is scientifically invaluable. It provided key insights into the hunting strategies of terror birds. CT scans of its fossilized skull revealed a structure incredibly strong in vertical strikes but weaker to lateral forces. This suggests its beak was a precision tool, evolved for quick, lethal blows rather than prolonged grappling. Meet Patagornis marschi, a relatively common terror bird fossil found in Patagonia. Standing about 5 feet tall and weighing 100 to 110 pounds, Patagornis represents perhaps the most balanced terror bird design. Because of this, it was likely one of the most common and successful predators in its ecosystem. Its versatile beak could handle a wide variety of prey. Let's talk about Mesembryornis. Think of them as the late-stage sprinters of the terror bird lineage. They survived into the Pliocene epoch in Argentina, standing 5 to 6 feet tall and weighing 150 to 220 pounds. They possessed particularly long legs, a build geared towards speed. Perhaps this was an adaptation to increasingly open grassland environments, or maybe to keep up with faster prey during later periods. But make no mistake, their beaks remained their primary, deadly weapon. Not all terror birds were giants, though. Meet Celopterus, a lineage that lived from the Oligocene to the Miocene in Argentina and Uruguay. These smaller birds stood only about 3 to 2, 6 feet tall, and weighed less than 22 pounds. Their smaller but still sharp beaks likely helped them hunt insects, reptiles, and small mammals, carving out a niche in the ecosystem quite different from their towering cousins. From colossal giants like Kelenkin to agile, medium-sized killers like Andalgalornis, and even the diminutive hunters like Celopterus, all this incredible variety seems to revolve around and aim towards optimizing one single, devastating tool, the beak. It was the key to their dominion, the very symbol of an entire dynasty that ruled the isolated continent of South America for tens of millions of years. Looking at this terrifying roster, which of these terror birds impresses you the most? And who knows, maybe the very ground you stand on was once part of their ancient hunting grounds? For nearly 60 million years, South America was a world apart, a colossal evolutionary laboratory where the terror birds reigned supreme at the absolute peak of the food chain. But then, a slow-motion cataclysm rewrote everything. Around 3 million years ago, tectonic activity began to lift the seafloor, connecting North and South America through what would become the Isthmus of Panama. This wasn't just a geographic bridge. It triggered one of the most dramatic biological events in Earth's history, the Great American Biotic Interchange. Animals from North America began pouring southward, and among these migrants were some of the most formidable predators the terror birds had ever faced. The battle for dominance in South America entered a brutal new chapter. Terror birds, with their specialized strike and retreat tactic reliant on that incredible beak, suddenly found themselves face to face with predators armed with entirely different weapons and strategies. Chief among them, the infamous saber-toothed cats and formidable ancestral canids, early relatives of wolves and dogs. Saber-toothed cats didn't rely on precision strikes. They closed in, grappled, and delivered devastating bites to the throat. Their claws held prey in place. Their jaws ended the fight. And the ancient canids? They were pack hunters, masters of coordinated strategy, surrounding prey, wearing it down through relentless pursuit, and attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. This kind of intelligent cooperation was something the largely solitary terror birds had likely never faced on such a scale. And now, the vulnerabilities of the beak became clear. What once was a masterpiece of vertical power became a liability in a world of lateral attacks and full-body grappling. The same force that could shatter bones from above was dangerously fragile when struck from the side. The beak was no match for wolves closing in from all directions or a saber-tooth ambushing low from the grass. And perhaps, just perhaps, the very specialization that made the beak so powerful was also its fatal flaw. The terror birds had mastered the art of hunting South American prey, but what happens when that prey changes? The herbivores migrating from the north had different anatomies, unfamiliar defenses. A single cleaving blow might no longer be enough. The sheer complexity of this story is perfectly captured by the incredible case of Titanus walleri. This is the only known terror bird species to have migrated north, successfully crossing the newly formed Isthmus of Panama and establishing territory in what is now Florida and Texas. It survived there until about 8 million years ago, living alongside and competing directly with the very same North American predators, often blamed for the extinction of its relatives back south. Titanus's beak was clearly still formidable enough to allow it to survive and thrive in this challenging new environment for a significant period. But even Titanus eventually vanished. Was it the prolonged competition? The Ice Age climates reshaping habitats faster than evolution could catch up? Perhaps, no matter how powerful, the beak couldn't adapt fast enough to a world in flux, a world where intelligence, cooperation, and agility became the new keys to survival. Some fossils from the final chapters of Forest Racidae in South America hint at a desperate attempt to adapt. A few species appear to have developed smaller, more flexible beaks, but it was likely too little, too late. The battlefield had changed. The rules of the hunt had shifted, and the very weapon that had once guaranteed their supremacy no longer fit the fight. The decline of the terror birds wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow, drawn-out fade over millions of years. Their range gradually shrank. The vast grasslands they once ruled now echoed with the howls of canid packs and the roars of saber-toothed cats. They were pushed back, relegated to denser forests, or remote, dwindling pockets of their former empire. The terror birds didn't disappear because they were weak. In their prime, they were among the most terrifying predators the planet has ever produced. They vanished because their ultimate weapon ultimately became mismatched for the new challenges. The new rules of competition brought about by the Great American Biotic Interchange and relentless global climate change. It's something to ponder when you stand before the towering skeleton of a Kelenkin in a museum. That beak was their identity, the source of their terrifying power, the feature that struck fear into the heart of every creature they encountered. But in the end, it was also a double-edged sword, a specialization so profound that when the world changed around them, it sealed their fate. As we look at the modern world with all its achievements, advancements, and human triumphs, perhaps it's worth asking ourselves, aren't we sharpening our own beaks in a different form? Technology, economic power, rapid progress. But are these weapons truly flexible? Or are we becoming so specialized, so focused, that we're fragile in the face of the planet's unpredictable shifts? Are we, in some way, repeating the tragedy of the axe-beaked rulers of a forgotten world? Our journey into the world of the terror birds ends here. But their story is not just about giant, terrifying birds. It's a story of rise and fall, of splendor and sorrow, of the grandeur and tragedy of evolution. A tale of how life, in all its forms, dazzles, adapts, and eventually fades. Thank you for joining us on this journey back through time. Goodbye for now, and see you again in the next story about the mysteries of our planet.